Persuadable. What's going on, boo-boos? All right. So people be like, Persuadable, why do you like dad jokes so much? Like, where do you get your dad jokes from? And the answer is, I get my dad jokes from a database. Fucking terrible. But we have survived. We have gotten through the dad joke. And today we are going to talk about a subject that I feel more people should be informed about. And that is, why is Perfumer die-in in tournaments? So for the most part, in official tournament gameplay, we see that Perfumer is hardly ever used. And when she is used, at minimum, it's typically round 3. Now, that's not in all cases, but for the most part, that is the reality in this current meta. And it's a bit surprising because Perfumer has always typically been a S-tier character. She was always typically an S-tier character in regards to tournament gameplay and selection. Now, before we talk about this more in depth, one thing that you should know is, by all means, I am not saying that Perfumer should no longer be played. I am not saying that she isn't viable in legendary rank mode, because let's be honest, a good Perfumer can be very destructive, and there's a lot of different ways Perfumer can be played. And in this footage, I'll show a lot of different ways how she can rescue. I'll show different ways that obviously she can kite very well, and she can be the difference maker in between turning a loss into a tie, or even a tie into a victory. Now, the reason why Perfumer is not really used too much anymore in tournament gameplay is simply because of the current meta. You have characters now who can chip away at you, right? Such as Bonbon. We have Sculptor that's used more. And although she can be effective at times with kiting against a Dream Witch, especially as the first kiter, for the most part, it still can be very difficult against a really good Dream Witch who's using Patroller. Now, one of the other problems with Perfumer in general is that she tends to feed Persona like crazy. Now, we know that in tournament gameplay, there are a lot of survivors who are rescue format teams. A lot of these teams build around Forward, Mercenary. We see even First Officer being used, but a little bit more frequently, we're seeing Gravekeeper, and even more frequently than that, we're seeing Priestess used in almost all the time. All right. So we have a slow decoding team, typically in tournament gameplay, to allow these survivors to kite better against these really formidable, dominant hunters who also have better anti-rescue now more than ever. For the most part, there's a few issues with that statement, but you kind of get the gist. Bonbon is excellent at it. Anti-rescue. Sculptor is really good at anti-rescue. Dream Witch can be relatively decent at anti-rescue, and in a weird dynamic way, even if she can't always prevent the rescue, although the best way of doing so is by using that Patroller trick. She can have a character leech hit them and multitask on somebody else for 20 seconds, because when that survivor goes down, they're still leeched. So a lot of these hunters are really good against a rescue, and we understand that, which really means that there needs to be a heavier format in terms of rescuing, increasing kiting. And so when Perfumer feeds presence, it makes it harder for the rest of the team to do their job. So even if you get a good kite as a Perfumer, you can maximize that character's presence right away the first time you're on the rocket chair. Now, before I continue with this comment and this commentary, I have received permission from Paul Blums to post this footage up. It was from a very long time ago, because I wanted some good Perfumer footage instead of bad Perfumer footage. And the only reason why I'm selecting this footage for the next 2 matches is because it's really the only gameplay he's saved. All of his recent gameplay has been deleted because he's been playing other characters. And I just want to really emphasize that that's the reason why I have selected the ongoing footage for the rest of this video. All right. So anyways, as we were saying, as these hunters are stronger and better, when you give somebody like Sculptor full presence right away, when you do that, you're allowing her to spike and you're allowing her to be able to really watch the match faster, watch and have map control more prominently, and making it even more difficult for the rest of the survivors to do their job. And you're actually making the rescuer hard. Because like think of a sculptor that regenerates those sculptures faster, or rather think of a bonbon with full presence where they finally have their maximized presence. To rescue against a bonbon with full presence is significantly more difficult. It's also one of the reasons why people don't play Magician. Even if you kite very well with Magician and you don't feed Persona, it's so difficult to rescue you because of the increase in rescue speed, 40%, that even if you play really good with a Magician, rescuing against a Magician can be so damn difficult against a character like Bonbon and Sculptor, who are the meta right now, that it's not really worth using him. And it's the same with Perfumer, except for different reasons, but the same idea. Now, Perfumer can be dominant against characters such as Photographer, can be dominant against characters like Lizard or Lucino, rather, can be dominant against many different survivors, hunters rather. But we don't really see those hunters being used in tournament gameplay because, well, the tournament is flawed with its rules. And I'll come out with a different video explaining the number one thing that the devs should absolutely change about tournament gameplay to make it better for everybody to watch, even though it's already exciting to watch. There's one tiny thing that they can change that will completely diversify the overall tournament eligibility in terms of which characters we see being played. Because right now we only see 5 hunters really being played a lot in top tournament gameplay. At least in the IVL League. And that is Sculptor, Dream Witch, Bonbon, Violinist, Blood Queen. That's pretty much what we're seeing. And that doesn't necessarily mean other hunters can't be utilized. It just means that those 5 are the most dominant and are winning the most matches, or at least tying. And so this is why we're not going to see Perfumer being used as much. And you're going to see that within the IVL League. For those who are unsure about what I'm talking about, you can go and check out the IVL playlist. I am uploading Professional League play every single day that it's happening, so you can watch high-tier players yourself. And you're going to see that Perfumer is really hardly ever used unless the round goes to round 3. And that's usually when 3 survivors are already banned, and that's when 2 hunters are banned, and she has a little bit more survivability. And saying this is difficult because this is why a lot of people are getting away from that sort of strategy and getting away from using Perfume. So the question is, should you still use her in Legendary Rank mode? And the answer really comes down to you as a player. Even if you kite well as a Perfumer, you can still make it a very difficult situation for everybody else on the team. Now, furthermore, we're going to go back to that original conversation, and then we're going to go back to what we were just talking about, because I'm jumping here a little bit. And you guys know that I do my videos in one take. In tournament gameplay, they really want people who have utility and can harass and can do things. You got your forward, you got your mercenary, and although Perfumer traditionally could go and rescue, it just doesn't work anymore with the current meta and all these hunters who can chip at you. That's why I started this gameplay footage of me showing how you can use Perfumer to save and to even body block and to harass. So we don't want to say she's just a kiter, but for the most part with the current meta, she doesn't really offer much utility other than kiting. Like, that's kind of how she's transformed for the majority of the meta hunters. All right, obviously the non-meta hunters, she's more powerful against, hands down. Now, how is she in Legendary Rank mode? Legendary Rank mode, well, there's not as much communication because you cannot communicate with half your team, right? At least when you're in Tier 6. So from there, really what you're trying to do is you're just trying to survive at that point. Now, some top tier hunters will look at the team format and they'll just leave a perfume or two at times. And although you decode normally, that's not always a good thing for you. So I am not saying that Perfumer is no longer viable. I am suggesting that Perfumer is no longer an S tier character and hasn't been for quite some time. And we're seeing that with that current meta as of now. I think that you should still use her if that's your main. But in top tournament gameplay, it's going to be very difficult. You will not bring the same sort of tools to the trade, because it makes rescues much more difficult when that presence is built up. Furthermore, you go against a perfumer with a really dominant hunter, they can get you to use those perfumes relatively quickly. And you can still go down in under 60 seconds. Obviously, it depends on what sort of perfumer you are. But this is why we see a lot of the top tiers, the professionals, they leave it. Because there's one thing that the top survivors will admit. And that is that when you go against the best of the best hunters, there are better characters to select than Perfumer. We're talking the best of the best. We're not talking about the people who are high tier. We're talking about the best of the best. They'll shut you down. And that's why there's a lot of top tier survivors in these leagues who are not using her in the first or second round. And when they were losing. The teams that were reluctant to get away from Perfumer did poorly. The teams that got away from her in the first and second round are doing good. And that's the reality of the meta, is that characters, their value come and go because it's directly in a relationship with the hunter meta and exactly where the hunters are currently right now. Now, something I want to let you know is obviously don't discourage people from playing Perfumer. Perfumer can still be a game changer. She can still add incredible worth to your team. We don't need to dichotomize it. We don't need to say she's useless, don't play her. It's just the point that in tournament game mode, this is the thought process of the best survivors going against the best hunters and the conclusion that it has led to them. Especially when you need characters who can really prevent any sort of persona presence building. That's why you see some top tiers using First Officer against a Sculptor. There's even conversation, especially with Cats, who's trying to prove that Wildling will be viable in tournament gameplay. A lot of these characters with survivability to avoid that persona increase. It's an important thing. A very important thing. And that's why I welcome you all to continue watching the Identity V League and seeing what you see as well as what I see and compare notes. Because this is why we're not seeing Perfumer used at all in any of these matches anymore. And the beautiful thing is that you all are going to be able to research it yourself instead of just relying on a whole bunch of people saying what they see. I'm going to allow you to have the ability to see the content for yourself as I post it on my YouTube. I know this is a long video. I know it's a long video, but I wanted to try to be thorough. So in conclusion, all right, because we're kind of playing off here because I'm kind of rambling a little bit too much. That doesn't mean that Perfumer is no longer a good character in general. It doesn't mean that she can't be a game changer. It doesn't mean that she doesn't have incredible worth to her. They're actually, last that I knew, I think the devs are actually thinking about buffing her. Where when she uses her perfume, you can see it. I'm not sure if that's true. I haven't asked them, but that's what I heard. I got to look into it. I don't know if it's true. But I'll look into it. Which I hope they don't do that, because then you're just taking away from one of the things that made Magician using the Magician wand. Although it's kind of different, I don't really think Perfumer needs more. I think actually Magician needs more based on the current meta. I want you to tell me what your thoughts are. Have you realized this? Have you seen this? Remember that when we stick and cling to old strategies based on what's familiar, it can shade our vision and kind of mess with our perception of what is and isn't working. That's my video, ladies and gentlemen, my boo-boos. I love you. Thank you for watching, and you all have a beautiful day. Take care now.